You know how in most horror movies there's the final girl, and that girl is usually subjected to torture, humiliation, degradation, brutality? Well, what if that script was flipped and it was a guy and not a girl? Well, hold on to your nuts, gentlemen. On this episode of Lindsay Recommends, we are going to be talking all about Calvaire. Calvaire, or The Ordeal, as it's also known, came out in 2004. In the early to mid 2000s, there was this influx of French horror films referred to as the French Extreme, and this was smack dab in the middle of that, along with films like Switchblade Romance, also known as High Tension, Frontiers, and several others. Splendidly creepy. Yeah, I gotta agree with that. In the tradition of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Psycho, and Deliverance comes this chilling Belgian horror that pushes the limits of shock filmmaking. Director and co-writer Fabrice Duwelz masterfully evokes a sense of deeply disturbing terror as Mark Stevens' world goes profoundly and utterly wrong. Yeah, I'd say that's an understatement. When his car breaks down in the middle of the isolated backcountry, he's forced to seek refuge in a rural inn. He's taken in by Bartel, a lonely and psychologically fragile innkeeper who promises to help. But when Mark catches him dismantling his car, he realizes that the innkeeper has other plans for him. Sadistic plans that will push him to the bounds of human pain and suffering. I'd say that's a good way to put it. I really like this film a lot. Ever since I first picked it up when it first came out at the Blockbuster. I'm surprised they actually carried this film. And what really stands out about it to me is the cinematography is amazing. It's very stark and drab. I mean, there's some pops of color, like some reds and some blues here and there, but mostly it's very gray and white and just barren. But there's also some really nice angles and camera movements and pull-throughs and overhead shots that are very engaging. And another thing about this film is there's absolutely no music in it. He sings a song at the beginning and they play a song on a piano, but there's no soundtrack, there's no score in this film, and that just lends even more to the realism of what's going on. And I'd say the whole look of this film is very stark, very gritty, very grimy. It's wet and messy. Wet and messy and cold is the atmosphere of this film, and completely batshit nuts. I don't want to get into too much detail with this film because I think if you have not seen this film, it's best to just go in blind so you have no idea what to expect, except that it's going to be utterly bizarre and messed up. But a couple of scenes that really stick out is the bar scene where they play the song on the piano and they do this dance, and it's just one of the weirdest scenes I've ever seen. The dinner scene towards the end, it's very reminiscent of the dinner scene in Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and then what happens right after the dinner scene is very intense with a lot of neat camera angles and just a lot of stuff going on. And there's also an extremely unfortunate scene that takes place in a barn involving a barnyard animal. And that's all I want to say about that scene. I'd say the biggest takeaway from this film for me is that yes, Mark is your protagonist. However, you get to know Bartell a lot more, and you see his loneliness and his joy and his fear, and he's a very sympathetic character. I mean, he does very extremely awful, terrible things. And so you kind of have to fight with yourself in your brain between wanting to sympathize for this character and also just watching him do these utterly disgusting and horrible things. And it's also not a very long film. It runs about an hour and a half. You will not be bored at any point during this film, I promise you that. But I highly recommend that you check it out. If you like disturbing horror, if you like psychological horror, this is right up your alley. There's a little blurb on the back of here that says, more disturbing, and disturbing is in big, bold capital letters, more disturbing and transgressive than anything you'll see in any other recent horror. I mean, stuff has come out since then, I think, that is on par with some of the stuff in here, but this is definitely stands on its own as far as disturbing and transgressive. Fangoria magazine said, an unsettling showcase for some truly disturbed behavior. And this movie is shot in French, so there are English subtitles. Subtitles don't bother me. I don't think you would completely get the whole feel and vibe of this film if you watched a dubbed version, because the performances are very interesting. And everyone in this film just looks weird. There's something off about every single person in this film. It just makes it even more crazy and disturbing. So yes, I highly recommend Calvaire. If you have not seen this, watch it. Experience this film, and then let me know what you think of it. And if you have already seen it, let me know what you think, because I'm like the only person I know that has seen this film. I don't know what that says about me, but I highly recommend it. Well, that's gonna do it for this episode of Lindsay Recommends. Until next time, this is Lindsay signing off. I'll check you later.